teacher. Chalk in hand, he's on a mission, shaping dreams with precision. Joseph, the English teacher, the best teacher in the world.
Hi everyone, welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today we're going to listen to some different voices. Now you may remember a few weeks ago we were talking about different tones, particularly amongst women. Back in the 1980s, there was an idea that women with slightly deeper voices were considered very attractive. And that's something which we still see today. And I'm going to play a few voices just so that you can get a feeling for the different tones which exist here in the UK. The first one is Joanna Lumley. Now I want you to notice how her voice is just a little bit deep. It's not only about the voice, but it's also about the way she carries herself. The voice does indeed sound very nice. And my generation, and maybe the generation just a little bit before me, people born in the late 60s, early 70s, we thought these kinds of voices were considered to be very, very attractive. Let's begin with Joanna Lumley.
Well, me, obviously. That's why I did it. You could scam your way into anything. I tell you, honestly, we were really not the loveliest people in the world. But we just had to look different. The Bond girls in the film I was in had to be 12 different kind of nationalities with the broadest sense of nationality, you know? It was just
You were the English
fabulous.
girl.
I was the English girl, but we all looked exactly the same.
Thank goodness.
Are we pleased to see you?
It's imperative.
Urgent.
Desperate.
But there was nothing stock standard about the role which would really catapult Joanna Lumley towards stardom. The high-kicking, no-nonsense policewoman Purdy from the 70s TV series The New Avengers. Purdy was really handy. She was good with the gun.
She was good. She didn't like boys much. She was a straight, po-faced police officer, really. And she was good at her job, cold as ice, pretty humorless, very good at driving, kicking, fighting, killing. She was great to play.
Right, that was the lovely Joanna Lumley with her very nice voice. As I was saying a moment ago, in the old days, if I can call them that, that kind of voice was considered a very attractive one for women. And we're going to move on now and look at another actress who sadly is no longer with us. This is Alexandra Bastedo. And in the TV series Absolutely Fabulous, she played the sister of Joanna Lumley, or the sister of Joanna Lumley's character, because they sounded quite alike. Alexandra Bastedo. Let's listen to her now.
I used to love the Champions. Alexandra Bastedo in front of that fountain.
They were agents working for this organization called Nemesis, based in Geneva in Switzerland. Our enemies varied. They were sometimes the Chinese, they were the Russians, they could be anybody at that time.
Commence phase 1 now.
Of course, because of political correctness, you can't make anybody a villain these days because we're friendly with everybody, or at least maybe we are, maybe it's superficial, I don't know.
Right, that was the late, great Alexandra Bastedo. And of course, she was able to speak a number of languages. She presented Miss World at one point in the 80s, amongst a few other things. And she had one of those voices that goes up and down a little bit. That was her natural way of speaking. And it seemed to me that this just was the way people spoke in the 80s. And it was, as I say, considered to be very, very attractive. Last time as well, we spoke about Marie Colette And her voice, which was considered to be one of the best ones on radio at that time, she was an actress, and of course you can catch her over on my other clip, which was dedicated to her. But right now, we're going to talk about somebody else.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vicki Michelle. Now listen very carefully. I shall say this only once. I'm patron of the Dream Factory children's charity in Essex. Please support the Dream Factory with fundraising activities that you can do from home. We need to raise funds for 25 dreams.
Right, so we could hear the tone there of Vicki Michelle doing her deep voice. And as she was talking, she went into a kind of normal voice as well. So it shows that, at least in part, with some of these actresses, or actors, as we call everyone now, they had a range that they could use. Now let's just move on a little bit, because we're going to come up to date now. I mean, those three, Joanna Lumley, Alexandra Bastedo, and Vicki Michelle, I suppose they really were voices that you would have heard in the 80s and 90s. But we're going to move on a bit, because we're going to listen to Beth Rigby now. Now, she's one of our reporters from Sky. Let's listen to her, and then we'll talk about her voice.
It is a historic moment in some ways. He's the first prime minister to come to China in 8 years. The last one was Theresa May. And since her visit, relations have cooled somewhat. Well, this is a moment where a prime minister is trying to have a strategic reset. And what it's all about the economy.
And of course, how can we talk about women with deep voices if we don't talk about Margaret Thatcher? Now, to understand Thatcher's voice, we need to take a little trip into history to understand more about the royals. Growing up here in the UK, it seemed to me, and this is just my own opinion, that the more aristocratic you were, or wanted to be, the deeper your voice would become. Last week here on this channel, we played something of our current queen, Camilla. And as you know, she has a very deep voice. The royals had voices which could command that a horse stops running. Stop. Very authoritative, very powerful. They were known for this. It's their breeding. I'm sure they've all had voice lessons. But more than that, their tone, the tone of the royals, was always a little bit deeper. If you listen to some of them, you'll hear exactly what I mean. And even now, you can spot aristocratic people, especially the women, by their tone of voice. So that sets the picture for Margaret Thatcher. She was our first female prime minister. Of course, since then we've had Theresa May, who also has had a quite slight commanding voice. Let's hear Margaret Thatcher.
Tax that away. You want to own shares in your firm? We can't have that. The state has to own your firm. You want to choose where to send your children to school? That's very divisive. You'll send your child where we tell you. Socialists don't like ordinary people choosing, or they might not choose socialism.
So, of course, some of these women were actresses, and they were using their voice to create a seductive way of speaking, which some may have considered to be a little bit French. Others, such as Margaret Thatcher, and if we think about Theresa May, the lowering of the voice was more of a power, authoritative trick to fool you in some ways, or to frame themselves into some kind of aristocratic framework to make themselves appear that they came from that stock of people. Now, recently I was in think it was a museum, and I heard a very deep, commanding voice. And I thought to myself, oh, that's definitely somebody that's going to be from one of our aristocratic families or very rich families that live here. You can still spot them. And indeed, I turned around and I was right. There was Lady somebody sitting there. And you just know the way they dress, the voice, the way they carry themselves. These people really do have a lot of power because they kind of command respect, not only by the way they speak, you just know that they come from a different background, you know? It's very interesting. And so I hope that gives you just a little insight into some female voices. Some are sultry, some are seductive, some just, well, are trying to be aristocratic, and others are just being themselves. If you think of Beth Rigby, for example, you know, they just naturally have deep voices. It's very interesting how all of these come together to make up the rich tapestry and diversity of the female human voice. That's it from me. Bye.